During the COVID-19 pandemic, has your presence been felt more by your in-person physical interactions, or has it actually been felt more by the things that you've done and said online? This obsession with presence and absence is something that humans have had for absolutely ages. It goes back to Aristotle's definition of time, which he talks about speech as being something that's heard in the present and responded to the present, rather than writing, which is something that's made in the past and the author is usually not present when you read it. That makes speech presence and writing absence. And this sort of obsession with the binary opposition of presence and absence has been something that humans have tried to use to interpret reality. It's given rise to all sorts of concepts such as phonocentrism, which is the idea that spoken language is a more valuable way of communicating because it happens in the present. Derrida comes along and he basically says that human beings have been trying to understand basic philosophical concepts such as truth, being, reality in terms of presence, and in the process including the role of absence. So basically all you really need to know is that for thousands of years the Western world has been absolutely obsessed with presence and therefore absence for quite a long time. And along comes Hayles and she says, well, actually, in the digital age, we're moving towards something else. We're moving towards something called pattern and randomness. Information is distinct from the markers that embody it. It's a pattern rather than a presence. The things you're seeing on the computer screen right now, they feel like a presence, but they're non-material and they're virtual. They're represented by computer code. They're patterns. Information's pattern, the non-information, is the absence of pattern, which is randomness. If all of your books were lined up on the shelf in alphabetical order, that would be pattern. If they're all in a mess on the floor, that'd be randomness. The opposite of pattern is randomness. So the absence of information is randomness. Only against the background of non-pattern can pattern emerge. You can't have pattern without randomness. You can't have randomness without pattern. It's a binary opposition. So presence in the traditional sense becomes a pattern in the virtual sense, and absence becomes randomness. So here's some examples as presence as a pattern. So if you're gaming, especially if you're with a lot of friends and you're online and you're all talking to each other and you're gaming together, that can feel like a presence. But really, you could just be, completely, you could all be in different parts of the world and you wouldn't really be present with each other. But it's a form of presence that's being represented as a pattern. The same is true for a group chat. The same is true for a group call. These examples of where presence feels like something that feels like a presence being represented as pattern. All around us in society, we're seeing examples of this. Cash turns into digital transactions, dating turns into online dating, and even something like as basic as a crime scene now dictated by DNA evidence rather than something physical, something present like an eyewitness account. These are all examples of how we're shifting from presence and absence to pattern and randomness in the way that we're experiencing life. Ownership to access is another manifestation of this. There's a difference between information and durable goods. Information's not a conserved quantity. If I give you information, we both have that information. By giving you this PowerPoint presentation, I'm not relinquishing my understanding of Katherine Hayles. Patterns rather than presence distinguish between those who do and do not have the right to enter. So what I mean by this is, imagine a computer hacker. He's trying to gain access to something that's trying to prevent him from accessing it, or something he doesn't have access to. It's not the traditional kind of breaking into somewhere and taking something. It's dictated by whether or not you have access to something and forcing yourself to be able to have access to something. Another example is online banking. So imagine back in the day, you'd have to walk into a bank, talk to someone, give some identification, they go to the back, they take your money out, they hand it to you. Now it's more like you type in the passwords to prove that you have access to your account, and then you're able to send money to people to pay for things. And equally, the staff members have access to certain of your details. So this is an example of shifting from ownership to access. So moving to something a little more literature based, we can explore this sort of idea of pattern and randomness in terms of semiotics. So I'll give you I will give you a quick recap of what semiotics is. It's the study of signs. Signs can be anything. Words are signs, for example. All these words on the screen right now only mean something if you understand English. That word computer, it isn't a computer in itself, but it does relay the idea of a computer to you. The same can be said for drawings. These are rudimentary drawings that I did on Paint. That computer, definitely not a computer, not even close, but it is communicating the idea of a computer to you. So signs are made up of a signifier and a signified. The signifier is the thing that's communicating the idea. The signified is the idea that's being communicated. So this gives rise to the idea of a floating signifier. A floating signifier is something that can mean different things to different people. It might stand for more than one signified. It might stand for any signified. And it might just mean whatever the interpreter wants them to mean. It's not a fixed signifier. It can have many different meanings. An example of this is race. Specifically skin color. Your skin color signifies something, but different skin colors signify different things. My skin color signifies something because I'm white. A black person's skin color signifies something different because they're black. In both cases, skin color is the signifier, but it's not fixed in what it represents. It's floating, it's ever changing. And this gives rise to the idea of a flickering signifier. And in order to explain the concept, I'm going to need you to get a piece of paper and a pen and write down the word tree. And I'm going to do the same thing. So we're both going to write the word tree together. Now, I want us both to change the text size and make it bigger. I want us both to change the color, both to italicize it, and I want both of us to change the font. I'm going to guess you couldn't do that, and I'll explain why you couldn't do that. So when I typed just then, I've created computer code. My interactions with the keyboard simulate certain messages to the Word document, and the Word document processes them, and it creates code that display the word as an image. Media comes into existence when the technology of inscription intervened between the hand gripping the pen and the mouth framing the sound, basically when new technologies create new methods of creating text or creating signifiers. Typing something on a computer is different to writing something with a pen, because when you type it on your phone, your laptop, you're creating computer code without realizing it, and that computer code displays the word as an image. It's a coding arrangement between the machine and the compiler. It restores and heightens the sense of a word as an image. This sort of textual fluidity you have when you're learning to interact with a system like your phone, like a laptop. This sort of relationship you had implies that the signifiers are flickering rather than floating. There's no one-to-one correspondence between the signifier and the signified. New technologies instantiate new modes of signification. That's an important concept to grasp. 200 years ago, if I tried to explain flickering signification to someone, it would make no sense. They wouldn't be able to imagine a computer code displaying an image. Wouldn't make any sense. And because we've now created this technology and we've created this new mode of signification, it proves that in the future we have the potential to produce even newer technologies that then go on to produce even newer models of signification. So you might be wondering, why does any of that matter? What does it mean for us? What does it mean for the text we study? Well, because we have bodies, books and humans have something to lose if they're regarded as just informational patterns. Once the coding has taken place, it's not easy to go back, and that means two things. On an individual level, you can't turn something that's code into something physical. I mean, you can print something, for example, but try and do that with the human body in virtual reality. It's not always something you can reverse. It can also mean, on a societal sense, once we've moved towards this idea of creating flickering signifiers, it's hard to go back a step. We can't reverse this. This change has happened. It's done. To get through to the importance of this, imagine a book. It's something physical. You open it, you can see the words, you read them, they're fixed signifiers, and they mean something to you. But when you make the step to an e-reader or reading something on a phone or your laptop, that changes the model of signification, and you can't be sure that that doesn't also change the way that you're interpreting the text. The model of signification has changed. You can't go back. You're now looking at flickering signifiers. It has the potential to completely alter the way that we interpret text going forward. The narrator becomes like a cyborg authorized to access the relevant codes. When the narrator in the olden days writes something in a book, it's different to the modern narrator who will type something and create code and write and create text through that means. It is completely changing these basic literature-based concepts. So, moving on to a more general sense of posthumanism, Hale sees the posthuman as appearing when computation, rather than possessive individualism, is taken as the ground of being. It's a move that allows the posthuman to be seamlessly articulated with intelligent machines. We're going to explore this idea through the text of Neuromancer. Now, there's so many concepts in Neuromancer that cover this that we could talk about. Artificial intelligence, cyborgs, things such as that. But what we're going to use today, because we're limited on time, is we're going to explore this through the concept of virtual reality. So in Neuromancer, there's a concept called cyberspace, and the characters in the novel are able to upload their consciousness into a computer simulation and then experience a virtual reality. They leave their physical bodies behind and they're uploading their minds, their point of view switches, and they become fully immersed in a complete virtual reality. And this means many things. This sort of highlights the advantage of pattern over presence, and that's because many of the characters in the book, they actually prefer being in virtual reality to being in the real world. They regard their flesh as a prison that's restricting them. There's a character who dies while his consciousness is being uploaded into cyberspace. His physical body passes away. He can't get back to that. It's like what we were talking before. It's hard to take that step back. It's impossible for him to now experience real reality. The only reality that's present to him forever now is this virtual reality that's made up of pattern and randomness. And as long as this pattern endures, the character is therefore immortal. You know, he can't die because his physical body's already gone. He's no longer restrained by the constrictions of our reality. So this sort of creates an environment where pattern and randomness is moved to the foreground and presence and absence is irrelevant. It's an optical illusion, basically, because everything around them is inside of a computer simulation. Everything around them is a flickering signifier. Everything around them is pattern and randomness. It's completely immersed in this world. And the thing I want to leave you with is that this is science fiction for now, sure, but it's soon to be our reality. If on June 21st you so wish, you could go into a non-essential shop, purchase a virtual reality headset and a PlayStation, and you can experience something halfway between the real world, our reality, and the reality that the character Neuromancer are able to experience. You'll be seeing things that are flickering signifiers. You'll be seeing pattern and randomness around you. You'll be immersing yourself in a virtual reality. And so it's not inconceivable to think that within our lifetimes we're gonna move towards a reality similar to the one in Neuromancer, where this fully immersive virtual reality is a very real possibility. And the thing that Hayles wants us to consider, or at least the things that we can consider thanks to Hayles, is that when we do achieve this next step, we need to be conscious of how we interpret things. We need to be conscious of how presence is an optical illusion and pattern and randomness is the predominant mode of experiencing reality. And everything around us is become a flickering signifier because the things we see aren't what they seem. They're computer code that are displaying and projecting an image.